Hello, everybody. My name's Ian, and today I'm going to be discussing both the journey and destination when doing art, all while demonstrating and talking about this particular robot piece, this Portage and Main Robot 005, basically the fifth in the series of Portage and Main illustrations I did. This isn't actually happening at the corner of Portage and Main. This is happening closer down to 300 Main, but I took the background photos on the same day. I was doing all of my Portage and Main reference photos. I kind of just want to discuss what my feelings on what art is. And from my personal perspective, this is about how I approach things. This is about what I feel. Why do I do it? And it can help with just examining why you do it, why you want to do it, um, what you're thinking when you may end up wanting to cheat about it, and what that actually means. So, with this particular illustration, again, I was doing. It was a day where the corner of Portage and Main, this would have been back in 2025, early summer of 2025. That corner here in Winnipeg had just been opened up to pedestrian traffic. So about a week after that happened, I went down to take a bunch of photos, including this reference photo on the screen right now. All of these were taken with the idea that I would be doing illustrations later of my robot characters standing somewhere at the corner of Portage and Main, somewhere in this very basic vicinity. So when I took the reference photo here, I deliberately was shooting it where somebody could be standing on this lowered ledge. Um, Once I had taken that and I'd taken all that series of photos, I then went through those photos, did a bunch of quick sketches, figuring out the rough pose I would want models to be standing at, um, to be able to use them as a reference for creating the actual illustration. And so when a little while after that, I did a photo shoot with my friend Erica up here. Um, one of those photos was the rough composition for what would end up being this piece. And so I took a photo of her. Um, When I started sketching this out, I had both the background reference photo and the reference photo of Erica sitting beside me so that I could then play around with not necessarily compositing because I wasn't using those photo elements in the illustration, but just figuring out where in space she was in this particular setting and how I wanted to change the setting, how I wanted to work with the setting to work with my particular style. All of this is everything about this whole journey from the initial photo to the rough sketch to the photo shoot with Erica to then working on the final piece, sketching it out here in Clip Studio Paint on my computer using my Huion Kamvas Pro 16 2.5K screen tablet. All of that is part of the journey to get to what would end up being the destination, the final illustration. And for me, that journey, especially the actual drawing and painting portion, for me is just as valuable as the final result, as the final destination, as the final illustration, because all of it were just were this is all composed basically of decisions I've made. And as I've gone along, I ended up changing my mind as I would further develop it. First, when I took the photos, I already had a rough idea of what these settings would look like because I'm through that corner on a fairly regular basis. I live downtown, so I'm at the corner of Portage and Main. It's not uncommon for me to be down there. So I already knew roughly what I was wanting, but when I was actually taking the reference photos, I ended up taking slightly different ones than I thought I would have because inspiration would hit as I was working on that. When I then sat down to sketch roughly what I wanted Erica to be doing, because Erica likes working from sketches, from storyboards, as a place to start. Even there, I was playing around with a few different ideas. And then when we actually did the shoot together, Erica will come up with a bunch of her own ideas on different ways to pose, on changing the angle that she's looking at. She likes having a base. She likes having this one just something to start with, but she will also um, just use that as a starting point. And now we're going to expand all of that. So that when I have my reference, my background reference open in front of me and my model reference, and I sit down to sketch, I'm also free to change things as I see fit to better work with the concept that I have. For instance, um, you can see here I'm painting in the brickwork of this foreground area at 300 Main. There's actually like a bus stop just to the left of frame that's not in the illustration, but I've drawn in this water. There is no water there. This water would be sitting about 15 feet or so off the top of the of Main Street at this point to be that high, and there is no water there. That's simply because I like playing with reflections and I like playing with water as a reflective surface, and because the bulk of the color choices in this illustration, the warm tones, the yellows and slight oranges, and the cool tones, the blues, those pretty much that composes most of the color choices in the entire illustration. I wanted to reinforce that with having reflections, with having everything being reflected into that water. And I wouldn't have necessarily come up with most of these ideas if I was just using prompts, if I was just typing something in and letting different programs just generate this for me. That would rob me of the process. That would rob me of all of these decisions along the way, working with a model to help elaborate on some of these decisions, bringing her ideas into this as well. And even something as simple as she was standing on a raised table, which itself was slightly glossy. So the fact that it reflected her also gave me some ideas about what I wanted to do with this. Like one of my original ideas was that it was going to be a winged robot. It was going to be one of my robot angel figures. Um, but something about the way she was standing, I realized this actually might work better if I had a flowing white shirt on the character. Um, I like playing with long hair. I like playing with wings, basically long um, design elements that will show the direction of with the wind. It'll add an extra dynamic quality. And with this one, I thought I was a fairly loose, open shirt would work really well for that to catch the wind in much the same way that her metallic hair is, just reinforcing that idea and also catching the light in a different way. The shirt is both reflective and translucent. You'll be able to see a little bit of the building behind her through the shirt as well. Just adding an additional dynamic quality to it. And these are all things that I'm wanting to play with on my own. That I want to bring to these illustrations. Um, and I don't particularly want to lecture against the use of generative AI in illustrations. I think anybody who's using it already knows what most people think of it. Um, but honestly, it's more to discuss how that defeats the purpose. That completely undercuts why I do illustration. Because then you're just jumping directly to the destination, and you miss all of this. Now, I was doing commercial work for decades, working with a variety of clients on a variety of types of projects, and many times you wanted to make it as close to what the client wanted as possible. The client also wants you to bring your own idea. They hired you because of what you do. You already have a body of work. Generally, the client will see that and they will have an idea for what they're wanting you to do, but they still want to have you bring your own personal style to it. And that personal style comes from this journey, all the various elements along the way. Whether you're working with models, whether you're not working with models, we're going to be working for from reference photos, whether it's entirely generated in your head. Um, it's uh, it's all what you're wanting to do. It's all your particular process, and you can't develop that process. You can't develop any of that if you're not doing the actual work. I've heard about uh, how some people think of uh, people railing against generative AI as some sort of gatekeeping. There's no gatekeeping here. If you're wanting to illustrate, pencils are cheap. Uh, Paper of all sorts is cheap. I mean, I was just doing a quick sketch earlier today, having coffee with a friend, with Erica at the Forks here in Winnipeg. That's all cheap. You just need to put in the time to get it looking like how you want it to look. Um, there is no gatekeeping. The only person standing in your way about doing that is you. Is you need to put in the time to be able to get things to look the way that you want them to. And it's there really aren't a lot of shortcuts. There's certainly a lot of assistance. There's plenty of things online that will help you with figure posing, with anatomy in general. There's plenty of things online and at your local libraries and things like that that are completely free. There's no gatekeeping here whatsoever. Plenty of people um, want to share that knowledge, but you still have to put in the work. It can't be done for you. If it's being done for you, then it's not yours. You didn't do it. Um, and just working on this particular piece here, um, all of this is ultimately mine. I did all the work. I did the painting. I made the decisions based on my own photos. Even taking a photo for a reference, I still had to figure out the angle. I still had to stand in the right position. Um, when working with models, the majority of models that I work with, um, they're depending on me to give them the ideas, but they still need me to come up with the idea on how it is they're posing, and we work from there. And I would say about half the models that I work with are friends of mine prior to working with me as models. Um, but almost half the people I work with saw my work, saw what I was doing, and really liked it, and asked to work with me. Um, and only recently have I been paying models to work with me, and so they weren't doing it for the money. They liked what I was doing. Um, None of that would have happened if I had just been typing prompts. I had to do the work. I had to have been showing the work, and there had to have been a fairly consistent style to my work so that they would know um, when I put out something new that it was done by me. It didn't look, these pieces don't always look exactly the same as every other one, but I like to think there's a certain style that carries through whenever I'm working on something. Um, there's a certain way that I approach contrast and like adding Terminator lines, like I've got on the figure here, where I'd put in a darker line between the warm tones on one side and the cool tones on the other. The fact that, yes, there are these robot women, and there are other artists who do work like this, but not exactly like this. Like, yes, I do have a book of Sorayama's behind me, and certainly that has been an influence. But these illustrations are very different from Sorayama's. So it's very much my own style that I've developed over the years. And it's because I kept working at it. Um, so again, I just want to reiterate how, for me, um, yes, the destination, the final illustration, that's important. I want to get to that point. But the act of painting, the act of drawing for me is just really enjoyable as well. I enjoy every element of the journey to get to that point. Putting together the initial inspiration. If I'm working from photos, the fact that I took the photos, I only work from my own reference photos. So I took the reference photos for the background. I took the reference photos of the models. Um, they didn't have any reference photos um, uh, for the shirt. That one I just did entirely freehand as I was going along. But certainly I've seen enough of those over the years that I felt confident enough that I wasn't too concerned about making it look appropriate. I won't say realistic because I'm not going for a realistic style, but it matches the style of the rest of the illustration. So again, this isn't really about badgering people for wanting to do one particular type of process over another. It's more discussing how I do it and how I'm viewing the act of drawing, the act of painting as being just as valuable to me as the final destination, the final illustration. Um, Certainly, a lot of that is because this is not being done for a client. Like, essentially, if there's a client here, the client is me. I just wanted to do it. Whether the book sells or not. I have a convention coming up, a horror convention I'll be at in September of 2026. That'll be showcasing more of my horror work. So, not necessarily illustrations like this, but a little bit darker ones. And a lot of the work I've done the last few years will be there and have already been put together in one particular book that'll be sold at the show. And certainly it's nice to do that and have it in print and have it available for sale. I also just like doing it. And really that's what it all comes down to for me. So the fact that there had been nothing there, and then through a variety of steps, I created the final image. So I don't want to, I really don't like rushing to the final image. I don't want to rush to the destination. The journey for me to get there is just as important, just as vital. Um, and you're really, from from my point of view, you're really missing out if you're not allowing yourself to take that journey to to be able to discover why you're drawing what you are, like why you want to create these particular images and how you can improve. None of them are ever going to be perfect. That's not the point. But every single piece I ever do, I learn something. Oh, I'd like to change this a little bit the next time I do something like this. Um, for this one, I initially started it with the figure only being lit by warm and cool tones, matching the background. But then I realized I wanted the colors to be a little bit more complicated. So I ended up putting in this grayer um, Terminator line as well. This much wider space of gray to make the coloring a little bit more complex, a little bit more realistic, in a fairly abstract kind of a setting. But I wouldn't have got to that point if I hadn't been thinking about what I was doing while I was working on it, and then after I was done. After I look at some of the illustrations and realize sometimes this works, sometimes it's what I want, sometimes it's not. I did one right after this that had less of that gray or mid tone. It was a little bit more just two colors because there are other colors in the environment already. And there are other decisions I'll make based on the models and what I think would be really interesting for them. But for this particular piece, this style of pose worked really well for Erica. And so here's the final piece.